Anger is one of the heaviest burdens a heart can carry. It doesn't just burn, it blinds. It pushes us into decisions we later regret, distances us from the people we love, and creates storms inside us that were never meant to stay. But the truth is, this anger is not who you are. It is only a visitor. And like every visitor, it has a message. When your heart tightens, when your breath shortens, when your hands shake, this is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that something within you needs attention, not punishment. The moment you pause instead of reacting, the moment you breathe instead of exploding, you reclaim your power. Inner peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of clarity. It is the quiet confidence that you are guided, that you are held, and that no storm inside you is stronger than the one who calms it. Let your heart learn to release what it cannot. Let your soul learn to trust the one who sees the entire picture when you see only a fragment. Healing begins when you stop fighting your emotions and start understanding them. Peace enters when you stop carrying what was never yours to carry. And freedom arrives when you choose silence over reaction, reflection over impulse, and surrender over rage. That is where true peace lies within you, waiting to be uncovered. Pause before reacting. These 4 simple words carry within them an entire world of healing, wisdom, and transformation. Most of the pain we experience in life isn't caused by the situations themselves, but by how quickly we respond while our hearts are still drowning in emotion. When anger rises, it demands urgency. It whispers, say something now, do something now, prove your point now. It convinces you that silence is weakness and patience is surrender. But in reality, the greatest strength you can show in that moment is the strength to pause, to breathe, to step back from the edge where your emotions are trying to push you. Pausing is not passive. It is powerful. It is choosing to act from a place of clarity instead of chaos. It is recognizing that just because a feeling is loud doesn't mean it is right. When you pause, even for a few seconds, you interrupt the cycle that anger depends on, the cycle of instant reaction. In those few seconds, something miraculous happens. You return to yourself. You reconnect with your values, with your purpose, with the version of you that thinks clearly and loves deeply. You give your heart the space it needs to speak truth instead of pain. We often believe anger is about the world around us, but most of the time it is actually about the world within us. Old wounds, unmet expectations, disappointments we never expressed, and fears we never admitted. When you pause, you give yourself the chance to recognize what is actually hurting. You begin to see the anger as a surface emotion, a mask worn by something deeper. Maybe it's sadness. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's the heaviness of trying to hold everything together alone. Pausing opens a door to self-awareness, and self-awareness is the birthplace of inner peace. The pause before reacting is a spiritual act as much as it is an emotional one. It is the moment when you choose humility over ego, wisdom over impulse, and trust over fear. It is saying to your fear, I do not need to respond from the storm inside me. I can wait for the storm to settle, and storms do settle, every single one. No feeling, no matter how intense, stays forever. Anger feels permanent only when we feed it with immediate reaction. But when you pause, you starve it. You weaken its grip. You allow it to pass, as all emotions are meant to. The pause also protects relationships. Words spoken in anger leave scars even after the apology. Decisions made in anger build walls even after the conflict ends. But silence, intentional silence, creates space for healing. It prevents wounds that never needed to exist. It gives the other person a chance to be seen instead of attacked, understood instead of blamed. And it gives you the chance to respond in a way you will not regret later. The pause is the difference between reacting to hurt and responding from wisdom. Pausing does not mean suppressing. It does not mean pretending you are not upset or forcing yourself to forget what happened. It simply means holding your emotions with kindness instead of throwing them at someone else. It means choosing not to let temporary feelings create permanent damage. It means honoring your heart enough to let it cool before making decisions. In that sacred pause, you may pray, you may breathe deeply, you may walk away for a moment. You may close your eyes and let the tension soften. Whatever form it takes, the pause becomes a moment of returning to your purpose, to your faith, to your dignity, and to your best self. It becomes a reminder that you are not controlled by anger. You are guided by something greater. When you pause before reacting, you reclaim your peace. You remind yourself that you are not powerless before your emotions. You carry within you the ability to choose a response rooted in compassion, clarity, and calm. You give yourself the gift of freedom, the freedom from regret, from impulsiveness, and from the inner storms that once determined your behavior. Pause before reacting, not because others always deserve it, but because secure heart does. Anger is a signal, not an identity. Listen to its message. Too often we mistake the intensity of anger for a reflection of who we are, as if a moment of frustration defines our character or determines our worth. But anger was never meant to become your identity. It is not a label you must carry, nor a cage you must live inside. Anger is simply a signal, an emotional alarm that something within you needs attention, compassion, or healing. It rises not to condemn you, but to guide you toward a deeper understanding of yourself. When anger shows up, it almost always arrives with a message. But the message is rarely what we think it is. We believe anger is telling us to fight, to shout, to defend ourselves, to prove something. Yet beneath that surface layer, anger is often whispering something more tender, more vulnerable. Maybe it is telling you, I am hurt. Maybe it is saying, I feel unseen. Maybe it is confessing, I'm scared, or I'm overwhelmed, or I don't know how to carry this alone. Anger wears a loud voice because the quieter feelings underneath have been ignored for too long. When you understand that anger is a signal, everything changes. Instead of reacting blindly, you begin to approach your emotions with curiosity rather than judgment. You start asking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What wound has been touched? What need has gone unmet? Anger may be the outer flame, but the fire within is usually something softer. Sadness, fear, insecurity, disappointment, exhaustion, or the weight of unspoken expectations. And you cannot soothe the flames until you understand the fire. Listening to anger does not mean indulging it. It does not mean allowing it to control your actions or dictate your relationships. It simply means recognizing that behind every outburst, every irritation, every flare of frustration, there is a deeper truth waiting to be acknowledged. When you listen compassionately to that truth, you begin to heal at the source instead of treating only the symptoms. Your responses become more intentional, your heart becomes calmer, and your relationships become safer and more understanding. Anger also reveals boundaries. Boundaries you may not have known were being crossed. Sometimes the message of anger is, this is not okay. Sometimes it is, I have given too much. Sometimes it is, I need rest, or I need respect, or I need to speak up. Anger can be a teacher when approached with humility and awareness. It shows you where you have been silent too long, where you have been compromising too much, or where you have been neglecting your own emotional well-being. It points toward areas of your life that needed real life. But when we fuse anger with our identity, when we begin to say things like, I'm just an angry person, or this is just who I am, we lose the opportunity for growth. We imprison ourselves in a narrative that was never meant to define us. You were created with the ability to feel deeply, but not to be consumed by those feelings. You can experience anger without becoming anger. You can feel it without letting it lead your life. Listening to the message behind anger also requires gentleness with yourself. Many people carry guilt for feeling, as if experiencing this emotion makes them flawed or spiritually weak. But anger is a natural part of the human experience. It is not a failure. It is an invitation. An invitation to look inward, to understand your needs, to heal old wounds, and to strengthen your sense of self. Ignoring anger only buries the pain deeper. Judging yourself for anger only multiplies the suffering. Opens the listening, truly listening, opens the door to transformation. When you allow anger to speak its voice, when you meet it with compassion, its intensity decreases. When you understand its message, its power to control you feuds. And as you learn to interpret your emotions rather than react to them, you begin to discover a peace that is not fragile, not temporary, but rooted in deep inner awareness. Anger is a signal, not an identity. Listen to its message. Not to feed it, but to free yourself, and not to justify it, but to understand it. Your emotions do not define you, they guide you. And when you listen with a sincere heart, anger becomes not a burden, but a doorway to healing, clarity, and profound inner peace. Release what you cannot control and trust the bigger plan. These words carry a quiet power, the kind that doesn't shout, but transforms you softly from within. So much of our pain comes from trying to hold on to things that were never meant to be held. People, outcomes, expectations, timelines, apologies we never received, answers we never got. We cling because we believe control each role, that if we manage every detail, nothing can break, nothing can disappoint us, nothing can fall apart. But life doesn't move according to our grip, it unfolds according to a wisdom far greater than ours. And so sometimes the tightness with which we hold on becomes the very thing suffocating our peace. There is a kind of freedom that begins the moment you stop forcing things to go your way. The moment you stop replaying conversations in your mind, stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed, stop trying to predict the future, stop trying to carry what isn't yours. Life is a tapestry, and you see only one thread, while the one who created you sees the entire masterpiece. What seems tangled to you is perfectly woven from above. Trusting the bigger plan is not about ignoring reality. It's about recognizing that your vision is limited, but divine wisdom is not. It is choosing faith over fear, surrender over struggle, and flow over force. When you release what you cannot control, you are not giving up. You are giving in. Giving into the understanding that forcing outcomes brings nothing but exhaustion, while surrender invites peace. Sometimes the delay you fear is actually protection. Sometimes the closed door is redirecting you towards something better. Sometimes the unanswered prayer is saving you from a path that would have broken you. But in the moment, all you see is the loss, the disappointment, the confusion. You do not see the unseen hands rearranging your life towards something your heart is not ready to understand yet. Letting go is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of courage. It takes strength to release a situation without. It takes maturity to stop chasing people who treat you as an option. It takes faith to walk away from what is familiar, even when it hurts. And it takes deep trust to stand in the middle of uncertainty and still believe that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Letting go creates room for new blessings, new opportunities, new people, and new peace. When your hands are too full holding on to what has already passed, you leave no space for what is meant to come next. Trusting the bigger plan also means understanding that not everything requires your intervention. You don't have to solve every problem, answer every criticism, or fight every battle. Some battles are not yours. Some storms are not sent to destroy you, but to cleanse your path. Some endings are actually beginnings disguised in unfamiliar wrapping. And some pauses in life are not setbacks, but divine resets, moments designed to realign you toward your true purpose. When you learn to release control, your heart becomes lighter. Your mind becomes clearer. You begin to breathe again. You stop living in constant tension, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. You begin to live with a calm assurance that no matter what unfolds, you are guided, protected, and supported by something far greater than your own efforts. And that is where true peace begins. Not in certainty, but in trust. You may still feel the fear when things shift. You may still feel the sadness when something ends. You may still feel the confusion when life changes direction without warning. But even with those feelings, you can choose. Trust doesn't erase emotion, it anchors you through it. It whispers, even if I don't understand now, one day I will. And in that whisper, the heart finds rest. Release what you cannot control and trust the bigger plan, because the one who is writing your story knows exactly where each chapter leads. And every time you let go, you step closer to the peace, clarity, and blessings that were always meant for you. Inner peace begins with understanding, not suppression. So often we confuse calmness with silence and silence with strength. We think that if we bury our emotions deep enough, pretend they don't exist, or close our eyes to the things that hurt, we will finally find peace. But peace built on suppression is not peace. It is pressure. It is a fragile quiet that cracks the moment life becomes heavy again. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel, and you cannot free yourself from emotions you deny. Real peace does not come from pushing your feelings away. It comes from turning toward them with honesty, gentleness, and compassion. When you suppress what you feel, it doesn't disappear. It sinks into your heart like a weight. It shows up in your sleep, in your stress, in your fears, in the tension in your shoulders, in the way you speak or stay silent, in the things that trigger you without warning. Suppressed emotions are like unspoken truths. They whisper until they scream. They become anger that erupts, sadness that overwhelms, anxiety that drains, or numbness that quietly breaks you from inside. Suppression is not protection. It is self-abandonment. It teaches your heart that its voice doesn't matter, that its pain is inconvenient, that its needs must be hidden. And nothing hurts the soul more than being ignored by the person living inside it. But understanding, real, compassionate understanding, is what brings peace. Understanding is the moment you stop fighting with your own heart and start listening to it. It is sitting with your emotions, even when they are uncomfortable, and asking them, what are you trying to show me? It is recognizing that every feeling has a source, a story, a root. Anger may be protecting a wound. Fear may be guarding a memory. Sadness may be mourning something you never allowed yourself to grieve. When you understand where your emotions come from, you no longer fear them. They become guides instead of enemies, teachers instead of threats. Understanding does not require loud expression. It requires gentle awareness. You don't have to shout your pain to acknowledge it. You don't have to collapse to admit you're tired. You don't need to explain everything to everyone. You simply need to be truthful with yourself. Peace grows in the soil of truth, not denial. When you allow yourself to name what you feel, hurt, overwhelmed, disappointed, lonely, confused, you create space inside your heart, space for clarity, space for healing, space for grace. Many of us were taught to suppress emotions, not because we are weak, but because we were never shown how to understand them, which were told to stay strong, which often meant stay silent. But strength is not silence. Strength is the courage to face your feelings without letting them dictate your actions. It is the maturity to sit with discomfort and the faith to believe that processing your emotions will bring you closer to peace, not further from it. Understanding also teaches you to respond to emotions, not react from them. When you understand why you're hurt, your anger softens. When you understand why you're scared, your courage grows. When you understand why you're overwhelmed, your heart begins to slow down. Understanding creates distance between feeling and reaction, allowing you to choose gentleness over impulsiveness, compassion over judgment, patience over panic. Inner peace is not the absence of emotion. It is the harmony between the heart and the mind. It is the calm that comes when your heart feels heard, not silenced. When your emotions feel acknowledged, not punished. When your pain feels validated, not dismissed. Peace comes when you stop running from yourself and instead sit beside your own heart as a friend, not a critic. There will be moments when understanding feels heavy, when facing your emotions feels like opening a door to a room you've avoided for years. But remember, anything you are willing to face, you are capable of healing. And anything you heal makes space for peace. Inner peace begins with understanding, not suppression. Because the heart does not need to be controlled. It needs to be heard. And when you finally listen, peace becomes not something you chase, but something that gently finds you. Choose silence, reflection, and surrender over impulsive reaction. These words are not about becoming passive, nor about letting life walk over you. They are about reclaiming your power from the storms inside you. Impulsive reaction is the language of an unsettled heart. It speaks quickly, loudly, and without thinking. It pushes you to say things you don't mean, make decisions you haven't thought through, and take actions that leave wounds long after the moment has passed. But silence, reflection, and surrender, they come from a place of wisdom. They come from maturity. They come from knowing that not every situation deserves the chaos of your emotions. And not every emotion deserves to become a response. Silence is not emptiness. It is protection. It is a sacred pause between what you feel and what you will choose to do. When you choose silence, you are not avoiding the situation. You are avoiding the unnecessary damage that strong emotions can cause. You are giving your heart room to breathe. You are giving your mind time to settle. You are giving your soul the chance to rise above the noise. And in that quiet, you begin to see what your emotions were blurring. Silence is often the difference between wisdom and regret. Reflection is where transformation begins. It is turning inward with honesty, asking yourself, why did this hurt me? What wound did this trigger? What truth am I meant to see here? Reflection softens your defensiveness and replaces your need to react with a desire to understand. It helps you untangle the layers of emotion. Anger that hides hurt, frustration that hides fear, irritation that hides exhaustion. Without reflection, your reactions are driven by old pain that has never been healed, conversations you never had, boundaries you never set, and exhaustion you never acknowledged. Reflection brings clarity, and clarity is what leads to peaceful, intentional responses rather than impulsive ones. Surrender is the most misunderstood of the three. Many think surrender means giving up, but surrender actually means giving in, to trust, to wisdom, to the bigger plan, to the understanding that you do not have to control everything. Surrender is saying, I don't have to win this argument. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to fight this battle. I don't have to be right at the cost of my peace. It is choosing to rise above the need for immediate reaction and aligning yourself with something far deeper and more lasting, your inner stillness. Surrender is not losing. It is choosing what truly matters, your heart, your peace, your growth. Together, silence, reflection, and surrender create a pathway away from emotional chaos and toward emotional freedom. When you choose silence, you pause the noise. When you choose reflection, you understand the noise. And when you choose surrender, you release the noise. These three steps turn an impulsive heart into a wise one. They turn turmoil into clarity. They turn reaction into response. Impulsive reactions are often fueled by ego, an ego that wants to defend, to protect, to prove. But silence is guided by move. Reflection is guided by sincerity. Surrender is guided by faith. With these, you act not from your wounds, but for You speak not from your pain, but from your purpose. You respond not from your fears, but from your strength. And this is how relationships heal. This is how misunderstandings dissolve. This is how generational cycles of anger, shouting, and emotional impulsivity finally break. When you choose silence instead of shouting, reflection instead of accusation, and surrender instead of control, you become a source of peace in a world that consistently pulls you toward reaction. There will be moments when silence feels difficult, when reflection feels painful, and when surrender feels impossible. But those are the moments when these choices matter the most. Anyone can be calm when life is easy. True peace is cultivated in the heat of the moment, when your emotions are loud and your patience is thin. Choosing wisely then is where growth happens. Choose silence, reflection, and surrender over impulsive reaction, because your peace is too precious to be sacrificed for moments that will not matter tomorrow. Because your heart deserves responses shaped by wisdom, not wounds. Because the strongest person is not the one who reacts quickly, but the one who chooses peace even when their emotions beg them not to. True freedom comes from healing the heart, not feeding the anger. This truth is simple, yet it carries the weight of entire lifetimes. Many people spend years believing that anger makes them powerful, that raising their voice, hardening their heart, or holding on to resentment somehow protects them. But anger does not protect, it imprisons. It traps you in cycles of hurtful thoughts, restless nights, and emotional exhaustion. It convinces you that shutting down is strength, that pushing people away is strength, and that bitterness is a shield. But the freedom you seek does not live in holding on to what hurt you. It lives in healing what was wounded. Anger is easy. Anyone can stay angry. Anyone can hold a grudge and replay the same painful story 1,000 times in their mind. It doesn't take courage to stay resentful. It takes courage to let the required soften. Because healing requires honesty. Uncomfortable honesty with yourself. It asks you to look directly at your wounds instead of covering them with rage. It asks you to acknowledge your pain, to name it, to understand it. And for many, that truth feels scarier than the anger itself. But healing is the only path to true freedom. When you feed anger, it grows. It expands into every corner of your life. It affects how you speak, how you think, how you react, and how you treat others. It destroys peace from the inside out. Anger might feel powerful in the moment, but afterward, you are the one left with the emptiness it creates. Anger promises control, but it actually steals it. It promises strength, but it actually drains you. It promises protection, but it actually isolates you from the softness you desperately need. Healing, on the other hand, is quiet but transformative. It doesn't happen in one moment, and it doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes healing is simply the decision not to respond the way you used to. Sometimes it's the courage to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Sometimes healing is allowing yourself to feel sadness instead of masking it with anger. Sometimes it's giving yourself permission to rest, to breathe, to take a step back, to stop pretending that you are unaffected. Healing the heart means tending to your emotional wounds the way you would tend to a physical one, with patience, gentleness, and care. You wouldn't keep poking a wound on your skin, hoping it will heal faster. You wouldn't expose it to harm, or reopen it every day to check its depth. You would clean it, protect it, and allow time to do its work. The heart needs the same tenderness. Constantly feeding anger is like reopening the wound again and again. Healing means choosing actions that allow it to. True freedom is the moment you realize that your peace is more important than your pride. It's when you stop letting old hurts control your present moments. It's when you stop letting someone else's behavior dictate your emotional state. Freedom is when your heart is no longer etching from the weight of grudges. Freedom is when you can breathe without resentment pressing against your chest. Freedom is when your past no longer holds your future hostage. You heal not for others, but for yourself. You heal because your spirit deserves to be light, not burdened. You heal because carrying anger is too heavy a load. You heal because you cannot live fully with a heart that is half closed. You heal because healing makes space for joy, space for clarity, space for love, space for growth, space for God's mercy to reach you in ways that anger never allowed. Healing does not always mean reconciling with others. Sometimes healing is walking away. Sometimes it is setting boundaries. Sometimes it is letting go of the need for closure or explanation. Healing means choosing what nourishes your heart, even if it is difficult in the beginning. Because the peace that follows is worth every step. True freedom comes from healing the heart, not feeding the anger. Because anger keeps you chained to what hurt you, but healing frees you to walk toward what is meant for you. Because the heart was created not to burn endlessly, but to soften, to expand, to return to peace.